Thank you, Dave. We have now about 15 minutes for questions and some answers from the panel. We don't have mics for the floor, so if people could just put up their hands, I'll try and run the question period. I'll do my best to reiterate your question so that everyone can hear. And in order to accommodate as many people as possible, we would ask that you keep your questions brief, to the point, and if you could direct your questions or comments to a member of the panel, that would be greatly appreciated. So, Dean, why don't you kick us off there?
Yeah, one of the things that's concerning me, due to how good a job we're doing, life expectancy of addicts has risen dramatically over the last 20 years. And in regular population, as people age, they're going to need new services. What's going to happen is if we can't even deal with us now, what's going to happen to the elderly addict? Because as I grow older, and I feel my wife around me, I'm scared. And I'm really, because we need stuff, you know, in Denmark, I would say I'm 40 homes for addicts alone because of the uniqueness. Can you comment on that, either Will or Dr. Kerr?
Thomas, you want to field that? Dean had a question about the aging population and elderly addicts and all of the health problems that we'll be seeing in future.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that the population that was most heavily affected by the epidemics of HIV, hepatitis, and overdose, those that were lucky enough to live through it, will be dealing with substantial health challenges as they age, and there will be a need for tailored programs. You know, I think you can look at the prevalence of hepatitis C in this community, and it's reasonable to expect that you know, liver disease, end-stage liver disease is going to be a huge challenge in this community. But I think, as David has pointed out, we're going to need appropriate housing environments, and I don't mean quasi-jails. They're here already. What we really need is you know, housing environments where people are allowed to come and go as they like, able to access the healthcare support they need without being criminalized and surveilled in the process. So I think there will be challenges associated with aging, and you know, when Vancouver had an epidemic of HIV and wasn't sure what to do, the Regional Health Authority and others were, you know, they were smart. They looked to other settings that had contended with similar problems and identified the responses that worked, and I think we may have to do the same thing as people age in this community.
There's a question in the second row from Richard, and then over there. Richard?
Yes. Well, I totally agree with the housing part, because I remember doing treatment many times and coming back down here because the only housing I had was, you know, wasn't going to be good treatment because they did a back and start. But my question is, in regards to testing and drugs, does that mean that the Levamisole is not in the drug anymore, the healthy order? Does maybe testing in regards to that?
So Richard had a question about drug testing and the presence of Levamisole in the cocaine. Thomas, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would maybe turn over to my colleagues at Vandu who may be more acquainted with what's happening with that recently. But, you know, it's interesting. I've heard from the drug user community for many, many years a desire for drug testing, and yet in British Columbia, the only drug testing lab, as far as I understand it, is a very under-resourced RCMP lab in Burnaby. And so certainly I think finding ways to test drugs locally for impurities would help. You know, we get together and we talk about issuing overdose warnings, but what I've heard repeatedly from people is what they're most concerned about is contaminants and toxicities in the drugs, and finding ways to identify those. So that would seem like a good step forward, but I don't really see any movement at this time. I don't know if you guys want to.
A couple of years ago, we found out that there was like 70% of the cocaine had Levamisole, and for you that don't know what it is, it's a pig dewormer. You cannot smell it, you can't taste it. The only way of actually finding out it's there if you had a tester, something to test the drugs, but they will not give us that. I don't know why, but they should. If they really care about the people down here, they should turn around and let us be able to test our drugs. And that's one more reason for that too. That's why if it was legal, we could get it from a drugstore, and therefore we wouldn't be harming our own bodies. And I believe that everybody should be able to intoxicate their bodies as long as it's not harming somebody else. That's all there is to it, and I don't think we should be criminalized for it.
question on the far left there, and then
I
on
would
the
like to
side.
make a comment. I've been a user for 47 years. The drug policies have failed. And we can get quality drugs, and we can help each other use the drugs, and that is the best harm reduction. And I would like to say that I believe the law is guilty of manslaughter. And if they don't stop, I believe they're guilty of murder. There's been much evidence about the effects of discrimination, which is what the drug laws are, and it's attrition. You get nervous, you get paranoid, all kinds of other things, like when feminism was gaining respect and the laws were changed to give women the right to vote. Prior to that, you know, they lived in hell. So anyway, I believe that. I'm not sure how realistic that is in our system, because it's dominated by people that are very immature, you know, and the drug policy has, you should take a little bit. What a little bit when you're in the mood, instead of sticking a needle in your vein with a maximum hit, it's fucking crazy. So they fucking change it, please, or else I call every goddamn leader of every country who's afraid of plants but is in support of military-industrial complex, etc., as guilty of manslaughter.
Thank you. Thanks. Dave, we had a question over on this side.
I got a question for you. It's Annalise sent me a question. She said, psychosis is not number one cause of hospitalization. That's why it's been following this. Is it caused by crystal meth? Is why it's following crystal users, or is it perhaps smokers doing that? It's part of the question around like the raise in, you notice doubling the amount of crystal meth.
Oh, yeah.
Is that evidence sufficient that is the power that needed to do something, because the men themselves is going around just a lot more crystal meth use?
Yeah, there certainly is crystal meth use. I think it's important to recognize, though, that while it has increased, we're still talking about less than 15% of people report any crystal meth use in the last 6 months. So we've seen an increase. It's still not as widespread as crack cocaine use. I think certainly there's opportunities, there's ways in which both drugs can promote psychosis, and we don't have a real handle on the precise contribution of each drug. But again, I'd be just interested in the opinion of the Van members on how they see this issue.
Just from our personal experiences, it can go both ways. I believe we need more studies and more testing on crystal meth use. We have to really get into that. We just started our own crystal meth user group, and this started last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago, and we're in the process of getting street-involved youth, hopefully more involved, the ones that are using this, so we can get a handle on what's going on out there on the street. And with that, and I would like to actually, hopefully, Thomas, that we could maybe do some work together about getting a handle and finding out about the psychosis part of it, because we do notice that there's a different trend in how people are when they are using crystal meth as opposed to not, and opposed to crack cocaine use. So it would be nice to get some stuff so we could help people out and figure out what's going on for them, because it's getting to be kind of a problem out there, I think, for people managing on the street. Then again, if they had a home, it might not be such a problem.
I guess I'm a little bit different on this. Like, okay, I lived down here for years. At one time, you'd always hear up, down, like, if you want to buy.
Yeah.
Now you're hearing meth all the time.
Sideways.
So the meth is really increasing down here, and I think it's probably because it's a lot cheaper to get, and because it is homemade, it's not grown. So I think it is becoming a pretty big problem, and I think it's about time that we have to really focus on that and see exactly what's happening with the people, because it is it's a drug that it doesn't do it does irreversible damage to you, but we don't really know exactly. So I think that there should be a lot more testing done about that.
Thank you. So Tracy had a question, and then Laura, and then there was a question in the middle here. So Tracy.
I was wondering, there's like this hoopla about the addiction medical doctors that are coming to downtown Eastside. Like, how's that process gonna go? Like, are you gonna tell us where or who can go to them? Or is it possible that they would be able to get us into treatment if we really wanted to get into treatment like right then and there?
Yeah, it's hard for me to really provide any answers about that, but there might be some addiction docs who are actually involved with that fellowship here, but it's really being led by Evan Wood. I don't have a lot to do with it. What I can say is really the overall spirit of the initiative is that we want to train physicians in addiction medicine. It's one of the only health issues where doctors don't actually receive much in the way of training, and there's been a lot of developments in addiction medicine, and I've certainly over the years heard immense frustration from the drug user community about how they get treated, how their addiction's managed in hospital, and this kind of thing. So the idea of the addiction fellowship is to train physicians who come from different specialties like family medicine, infectious disease, internal medicine, the like, so that there's always a growing mass of physicians who actually have some training in addiction medicine, and the hope is that over time there'll be enough of these docs around that they will be accessible to people and they will be able to help them get treatment. Now, training people is not enough, because we know, for example, that there are a number of effective treatments that aren't even available in Vancouver. There are also a number of promising experimental medications that I know Evan has spoken to members of VANDU about, that people are interested in and want to see trialed here. So I think those two things need to happen kind of in parallel. We need to train addiction medicine specialists, but we also need to make sure that the system of addiction treatment is growing, both in terms of quality and quantity.
Laura, I believe you had a question there?
Laura?
Oh, I actually just wanted to touch on the subject of the levamisole. I'm pretty sure that within the last year, nothing has changed, but we saw that there was an 81% of all the cocaine that came in through Vancouver is laced with the levamisole, which is the hog dewormer. And one of the worst things about this is that there's no way to cook it out of the cocaine. It's there. The best we can do is try to make sure that people have clean supplies and supplies available to them, so that when they do have infection, they can take care of it a little bit better. And another comment was, I just think it's really important for people to know that I don't believe that harm reduction promotes drug use. I think that through harm reduction, it helps the people that are already using stay safer and live longer.
Thank you, Laura.
I'd just like to mention about the levamisole also, is that if you are indeed using cocaine, rock cocaine, when you are talking to your doctor, tell them about your drug use. Always be upfront about that. And if they don't know about this levamisole thing, mention that to them. Make sure that they know, so that when they're doing any kind of test, because there's a lot of different side effects from this levamisole. It attacks your white blood cells, stuff like that, can take your immune system down. So there could be complications going on they might not understand. So make sure you're always upfront with your healthcare provider, your doctor, and let them know. And if they don't know, you tell them, okay?
Thank you, David. There's a question in the middle there. Yes, please.
Well, so I think the question, if I understand, is, are these observations specific to Vancouver, or are they occurring in other cities? And I think the answer is no, they're not occurring in other cities, and in good ways and bad ways. But I think what's most noticeable is the province of British Columbia is the only province in Canada that has shown consistently declining rates of new HIV infections. So most Most provinces are remaining stable. In the prairies, you're seeing a massive epidemic related to drug use within primarily Aboriginal communities, more remote areas. But I think there are really two things that led to the huge decline that we've seen in Vancouver and in the province. One was there was a very eventually a thorough harm reduction response. Let's face it, it didn't work out very well in the beginning. The needle exchange had a lot of problems, but eventually that whole policy and program was redesigned and shown to be effective. There was a supervised injection site open, a lot of peer-run programs, etc. And at the same time, people were receiving HIV treatment at a much higher rate. And we now know that when people are effectively treated with HIV, they're much less likely to transmit the virus. There are many places in the world where doctors still believe that people who are actively using drugs should not be given HIV treatment because they won't be able to adhere to the medications. And among the very important work, I think, that came out of the Access study with our group was the work of Evan Wood, which showed that drug users can adhere to HIV treatment. They can suppress their viral load. They can be successfully treated despite active drug use. And it's really all the other social conditions around them that make it difficult, the housing issues, etc. But people are able to be successfully treated. And so I think the combination of the harm reduction response, the education from the drug user community itself, and the HIV treatment response has led to a huge decline in HIV infection that hasn't been seen elsewhere. I think Vancouver has also been more aggressive in its harm reduction response. And, let's face it, this just stands in such stark contrast to what our federal government is currently advocating, what they're doing, where they're putting their money. And I think they have to take a long look at these data and ask themselves, what works and what doesn't work. Because what I hear is a lot of rhetoric about harm reduction being misguided. And I think the evidence that we're showing today is that these responses actually work, and maybe they should reconsider what they're doing.
Thanks, Thomas. There was two questions on this side. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, and then Chris. So please go ahead.
I'm Patty Robinson. I'm also a current Vancouver board member. I'm approaching 62 years old in a couple of weeks. I've been getting high for a few days. A couple of things that have been mentioned is like we're constantly talking about treating addicts. What do I need treating? I'm healthy. Today is my glass of wine. It's my beer. Instead of a frosty cold, because I can't drink. I get in trouble when I drink. I get little scars. I break things, not only just me, other people. With the drug use that I'm into now, I don't do those things. I don't go to jail on a regular basis due to violence or driving under the influence. It's just, to me, and alcohol was my gateway drug. Okay, not marijuana. Of course, I took diet pills long before I took marijuana. Alcohol was really the thing because that was so common, and it was beers and let her get happy, So the other thing I wanted to say is that I really think it's a crime and a sin that our government is supposed to be of the people, and we are part of that, whether we use drugs or not. We are of the people of this great country. But for them to say, what's more important to us is the CIA or whoever it is down in the States who's got a lot of controls up here with this stuff too, is that we're going to let this gang and that gang make all this money, buy guns, do whatever it is they want to do as they keep putting you into hazard's way with the things that are being cut into the drugs. Methamphetamine is being cut into your crack cocaine. I don't care what anybody says. You can see the little spirals in your pipe. When you smoke it, you see those little round circles. Those are called, they're called crystal meth flowers, I forget, it doesn't matter. But we have a government that's supposed to be for us, and we're supposed to be a part of this government. And they're allowing these drug dealers, and I'll say it as I always say it, we're putting them in Cadillacs and condos, and they're putting us in caskets, and it's freaking wrong.
Okay, I'm a I'm a smoker. I smoke crack cocaine every day. I had a broken back as a baby. I'm a little bit different from Dave. I won't, I hope my doctor doesn't hear this, but I don't tell him all everything, because when I did, the alcohol really did do damage to me. I've got hep C, and I was in the hospital. I almost died, but yet I kept using the crack cocaine, and like I had high blood pressure. I was overweight. Everything went down, and my health is really, really good because I do smoke, and I think it's really helped me. You can't really use Tylenol 3 if you've got a bad liver. I've got genotype 4. I've had it for almost 30 years. I'm going to be 57 years old, and I'm in pretty good health, I think. And anyways, but I don't believe that you should tell your doctor everything, because they won't give you the other things that you do need.
Brief comment from Thomas here, and then take a question from Chris, and I think that'll be the last one.
Just to be clear, in advocating for an expansion of addiction treatment, we are very clear that we feel that that system of treatment needs to be entirely voluntary. Certainly there are many people who choose treatment and want that. There are others who don't, and that's a personal decision. What is really concerning to me is that under the current federal, national anti-drug strategy, treatment and coercion and the criminal justice system are kind of getting all confused and mixed up together. It's my view that what we really need is a comprehensive system of voluntary addiction treatment, not more drug courts.
Chris had a question on the right here, and I think this will be the last question we'll take. Thanks.
Drug addict, also HIV positive, and what creates the bullshit about how we should get drug addict. They're anti-retroviral, there are different methods. For instance, I always took my pills every day when I went to go get my method, right? Or else the smallest study. There are various ways on doing that. Second of all, let's see Canada adopt housing strategies. In my experience, I've actually seen positive improvements in to basically actually looking at velocity and regular decision, right? Third of all, when it comes, I'm all for it, and I applaud training more doctors on addictions and all that. But, and this is a big but, that when it comes to the time for the actual treatment, we have plans on utilizing many peers, such as myself, who are at good illicit wellness to help facilitate that addict over with that, because I know there are a lot of speed addicts that when we come up and see the doctor with all the fancy initials behind it, what the fuck do you know? So that is, how do you know, right? Because A, the understanding isn't there, and B isn't there, and the compassion isn't there.
So we have one more question in the front, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah. Through all these studies, through 96 through 2011, unfortunately, there's a section of people that are missed all over again. The people who are dying out there. Like within a 6-month period from last summer, when they shut down all the beds at First United Church, we lost about 21 illicit drinker members. That's because there was no lack of housing, and they're still not, they're still being missed out. They're still being overlooked. The illicit drinkers, they need to be looked at, and they need to be have some form of harm reduction, more help from them than what happened right now.
That's right.
I'd just like to make a comment to what Rob said and Chris also about housing and alcohol and drug use. There was a program in Calgary called Homes First. They went around and they housed people before they did anything. They let them have rent-free for a year and got them involved in programs and things like that to help them get on their feet and actually have them working and stuff like that. They got them around to, even if they could only work a couple hours a day, maybe a couple days a week, but it made them part of their community. They were doing peer work, and it was an awesome program. In the first month of that program going into effect, drug and alcohol use dropped by 50% in 1 month. Now, if that doesn't tell you that we need some housing, I don't know what does. If you put people in stable housing, they will stabilize. You will, and you give them the supports that are involved. So hear that, Harper. Get the money out of the jails, put it into housing. Thank you.
Thanks, David. We've got a few things to wrap up at the end, but we were hoping that Lorna and Dave could lead a moment of silence for us to remember all the people in the neighborhood that have passed away over the last 15 or 20
If
years.
everybody can just stand up and take your hats off, please. It's a tradition that we do all the time at Vandu, that we always have a moment of silence for the people who've already paid the ultimate price, the ones that are still fighting out. I'll start dedications off with two of my daughters, Mandy and Deanna. Any other dedications, please?
Chelsea, Dana, and Ray.
Marilyn Shepherd.
Skype and drug overdose.
Richard Vincent.
Houston.
Iris Knight.
This lady.
To let this moment be for them. All my relations. Thank you very much for coming here today. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd just like to thank everyone again, and this event would have been possible with the help from a number of people. We'd really like to acknowledge Lisa and Sharon from the Carnegie, Ianis from Vandu, Mint, Deborah, Tricia, Cora, Kevin, Fernando, John, Mike, Brendan, and Gabriella for all of their contributions. Michaela and Lily for organizing the event. Once again, thank all the presenters for their presentations, taking the time to speak today. And last but not least, if anybody from the media would like to interview anybody from the panel, they can just connect with Kevin and Wallet. Kevin, could you put up your hand there? So you can connect with Kevin. Thank you again for everybody for being here today. Thank you very much.